Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. Welcome to the Learning Up podcast, where we really talk about with leaders how to really scale companies through learning. And one of the most important things for you to be able to learn is gather data. And that's why we're talking today with Alejandra Gomez. Hey, Alejandra, how are you?
I'm good, Daniel. Happy to be here.
Good, good. So before we go into the questions, let me give a quick bio. Alejandra is an experienced internationalist with a professional background in business analyst and publishing for both print and media. She's the country editor in Mexico for the Business Year, a media platform based in London that publishes economic reports in over 30 countries. She regularly interviews high-level international executives and business leaders all over the world, and she's been doing this for over 10 years. Before being country editor, she was senior industry analyst for Mexico Business Publications for 3 years. So, Alejandra, you help a lot of the biggest business leaders of the world take decisions based on data. You help them get reports and all that. So first, why it's so important to have data, and why they come to your services, and why it's so important that you guys produce these reports for business leaders to be able to understand?
No, thank you, Daniel. And to start, thank you again for inviting me to participate in your podcast. Very happy to be here. And yeah, so to start, why is it important to have data? Well, as we all know and your audience knows, the complexity of the global economic landscape is more difficult than ever. So it is very important to be up to date on what's going on in different market trends. How we help business leaders stay up to date on what's going on in the market is by using annual publications that highlight investment opportunities in emerging markets particularly. And we do this by maintaining a close relationships through different partnerships. For example, here in Mexico, we work very closely with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce to make sure that our content is as up to date as possible. We also collaborate very closely with main industry events and trade events to make sure we know the thermometer of the economy. So we use all of this information to include in our publication and have it serve as a thermometer of what's going on in the economy to make business decisions.
So let me go back to a little bit to understand what is Business Year company? Why it was created? What was their main purpose?
Yeah, so the Business Year is a global media group that is present in over 36 markets around the world. And we provide investors, businesses, and also governments with first-hand insights into the world's most dynamic markets. And we do this by printing and distributing in digital platforms annual publications of these selected markets. So for example, here in Mexico, we interview about 200 CEOs, entrepreneurs, and authorities of the public sector to highlight investment opportunities in this annual publication.
Right. And for you to be able to do those reports, you need to gather data. And data is a problem around the world. If you live in a developed world like England or the US or whatever, they have a lot of data. When you go to an emerging country like Mexico, anywhere in Latin America, Africa, South Asia, there's no data. So how do you gather these data for the publications? What kind of sources do you use? And how do you collaborate between sources to make sure it's correct?
So one thing we focus a lot on, and that we're actually very happy, is that we're an independent media group. So a lot of people ask us, well, who owns the business here? Who's behind it? So something that helps us a lot in gathering data is the fact that we are independently run. We also make sure to consider multiple perspectives. So for example, here in Mexico in 2018, a new administration came into place and people were very scared of what this new administration was going to do, particularly in the business world. So we make sure to also include them in the publication. So we interview, for example, the governors. We also interview the directors of the main projects of the public administration. So for example, here in Mexico, they're doing the Mayan train. They're also doing this multimodal project in this Mesa Tehuantepec here in Oaxaca, the new airport. So we make sure to also get the perspective of those people that maybe some people in the business world are scared of, to get an even perspective, and ask them some of the questions that people in the private sector are telling us to them, so that they can have the chance to give the perspective. So we work a lot on making sure that we consider multiple perspectives to give a complete picture as we can of the Mexican economy.
Okay. So what are the challenges that you face providing this economic intelligence to business and investors? What are you guys doing to mitigate these challenges? What are the typical things that you're worried and you have issues in your business?
One thing is making sure our data is as relevant as possible. Right now, trends are changing so quickly. Also, like maybe like legal aspects or regulations or reforms are also coming out very quickly. So just making sure that we're as up to date as possible and that we can get this information as fast as possible. So even though our publication is released once a year, we also make sure to update our LinkedIn's and our social media and upload the interviews as fast as possible so people can get this information. So that's a challenge that we have, like making sure that we're up to date to the constant changes that we're seeing in the Mexican landscape. Another challenge is also to highlight sectors that are maybe under the radar. Like, as I said, like we highlight investment opportunities. So a big part of this is making sure that maybe sectors that are having a lot of, or are looking for a lot of capital are getting seen by the investment world. So we're always on a constant lookout of growing industries.
Okay. And you do this every year, every 6 months. How do you keep the data relevant and make sure it's up to date, because things are moving really, really fast? Like if you have a yearly report and something comes up in the year, do you guys do an update or what do you do?
So we do different things. For example, we do in-person events also, like we have an annual event in the middle of our project. So our project runs between a year. So it takes a year. As you know, interviewing CEOs can be challenging, like getting the agenda to combine and getting the time of CEOs does take a full year for 200 CEOs to be part of the publication. So it is a year-long process. But in between, we try to do little things. For example, we participate in other events that are here in Mexico, or for example, we've also participated in events in the US and Canada to be able to have a chance to interact with our audience a bit more. And we also use digital platforms to have like a constant stream of information being released out digitally.
So I imagine you're seeing a big trend on the nearshoring, with Mexico being kind of a center now that the US is having all these challenges or issues against or with China. So what's happening in Mexico? What's going on with the nearshoring, and what do you think to be the real opportunity?
Yeah, so nearshoring is massive. I would say that almost 90% of the people that we're interviewing are talking about nearshoring. The only thing is that, yes, it is a massive opportunity for Mexico, but it's also going to require a lot of preparation from both the public and private sector in different aspects, no? Like making sure we have enough qualified labor for these companies that are coming to Mexico and investing in plants here, and also making sure that we have the infrastructure and the raw material, for example, energy supply and water supply for these plants. So that's like some of the challenges that are behind this. Like nearshoring sounds very nice and pretty in a picture, but it does require a lot of work behind. And that's something that we're focusing a lot with the companies that we're speaking with, like what steps can Mexico do to make sure that we're prepared for this incoming investment. Also, companies right now are very happy about the announcement of Tesla investing here in Mexico. Despite what anybody thinks of Elon Musk or the brand, like it is a very large, internationally recognized brand that is saying, yes, we want to invest in Mexico. So people are very happy about the message that that's spreading worldwide.
Yeah, and I agree that Tesla plant in Monterrey, it's a sign that a lot of companies are going to follow. Said, hey, if Tesla is doing it, we're going to do it. And all the suppliers that they need to go. But yes, now as a business owner in Mexico, I'm getting worried my labor costs are going to go through the roof. There's going to be a lot of great things coming into the country, but there are a lot of challenges that we need to overcome and learn how to do. So
and also changes.
And also changes. So what are the typical fears that a foreign institution has in dealing with Mexico with nearshoring? What are the top 2 or 3 fears?
You know, something people tell us a lot is political stability. Like they're quite scared of, you know, like reforms are getting mentioned a lot quite often. And also there's a new administration. Before there was maybe 2 political parties that were running the game for a very long time. So this new political party obviously caused a lot of instability. But what we've been seeing is some companies are responding by having a long-term vision, and that's something that we recommend to a lot of players coming into Mexico, to be in here for the long haul. If you kind of just focus on the current administration, which is only for 6 years, you can get stuck in this head game, no? But we're seeing a lot of companies that are telling us like, no, our strategy is going to be for the long term. So yeah, that's a very important focus that we're having here in Mexico.
I agree. I am one of those camps that I'm really, really worried for the political and government stability. All right. So give me a couple of examples of how your business have helped other business identify opportunities and really take business decisions. Like if you're like Tesla, did Tesla went with you guys, read some of your reports, or like tell me a couple of examples of real companies using business year?
So something that we were talking about before is that we really try to highlight sectors that are maybe a bit under the radar. So something that's been developing a lot in Mexico is telecom infrastructure. Like we're talking a lot about the digital transformation, and going digitally to the cloud, but all of this also requires physical infrastructure to be created to handle this information. So we're seeing a lot of investment in that. In the last couple of years, we've been highlighting companies that are developing projects in different parts of the country. And these are quite capital heavy projects that need to be developed. And we were actually able to connect some of these projects with investment funds because their publications are also available in the Bloomberg terminal or Dow Jones Factiva in different investment platforms. So we were able to connect projects with investors with these kind of distribution channels that we collaborate with. But that also brings me to a very interesting point that we're seeing international investors that maybe before had labeled Mexico as a no market, like we're not going to be investing in it. And for the first time in the last year or so, we've been seeing them like starting to look and ask questions about what is happening in Mexico.
You mentioned earlier about kind of the ownership or the structure of business year. How do you maintain objectivity and impartiality in reporting analysis? Today, a lot of the media has been used for political focus or alignment. How do you guys maintain that objectivity and impartiality?
As I mentioned, we're an independent media group, like we're not owned by any other group. So we do maintain a lot of independence through that. We also have different partnerships with chambers and associations to kind of keep us on our feet as well, like to keep us grounded. And so these are people that maybe are helping us like stay more balanced in the information that we're creating as well. And just making sure that we're including as many perspectives as possible. And also in our events, we include as many perspectives as possible as well. Like we include also the private sector and the public sector. For example, last year, we included some people from the new airport, the new Mexico City airport, that a lot of business people were quite concerned about, like how it's going to be working. So we were able to connect these two perspectives and give them a chance to dialogue and interact. That maybe in other opportunities they wouldn't be able to.
So now that you mentioned the new airport, it's been a big issue in Mexico. I flew from that airport a month ago, and I told one of my clients, "Hey, I just flew from the airport," and he said, "I will never fly from that airport." And I was like, "It's a good airport. It's far. Politically, it was a mess, complicated.
Yeah,
but it's a good airport, and the flight that I took was a great flight." And he said, "No, I will never fly from that airport. I'm so mad with it politically that I will never fly from the airport." I thought it was interesting that divided is the country, and that
exactly.
Divided, I was surprised.
And I agree, there was a lot of issues in the development and controversy, but it's actually a quite beautiful airport. It is far and it's hard to get to, but it is actually quite beautiful once you're inside and well run.
Yeah, and it's well run. Yeah, but it's interesting. Is run by the army in Mexico. And when you go through TSA or whatever is in the US, the TSA, the security, the amount of bags that are searched compared to the normal airport or the Mexico City airport, the old one, it's dramatically different. And you see that the army runs it differently. So I thought that was interesting. But yes, it's a beautiful airport. It's pretty high ceilings. Material, it's a nice airport. It's far. I hate getting there, but yes, it has become another political issue in the country more than anything.
And a political statement, no? That you use
a political statement, yeah, it's a political statement. I will not fly from that airport because I don't agree that it was built. But
exactly,
whatever. But yes, it's those kind of things are hard to keep objectivity and impartiality. And not be able to bring those ideologies. So next questions kind of are on that. Like I tell my wife and my kids that I have a lot of inboxes. Like whenever you have a birthday today, you get LinkedIn and you get emails and WhatsApps and all these things, right? For information is the same. We have a lot of inboxes for information. What do you recommend a business leader to really understand what's going on around the world, be able to see all points of view, politically and the rest, and be able to take decisions with real data and be able to see both sides? What do you recommend a business leader to do?
I can only speak maybe, for example, here in Mexico or Latin America, like what's an important way of getting a sense of what's going on in the business environment. As I mentioned before, industry events are very important thermometers of what's happening in different sectors. So for example, here in Mexico, there's different events for the chemical industry, for the mining industry, for the automotive industry. Like these are quite important events to be present in, to get a sense of what's going on in each one. And also looking for international standards. Like a lot of companies that we speak to that are having a lot of success here in Mexico is they say a lot that maybe the regulation or what is required of a company here in Mexico does not compare to what's going on in other markets. So maybe, taking it into your own hands and bringing in international standards yourself that maybe aren't required of you legally, but it's a way of creating more productive operations and making your business model more attractive for international investors. So keeping an eye out on what's happening internationally is also very important step in making sure you have a very holistic perspective of what's going on in the industry and not only focusing locally.
All right, let me go now a little bit the last minutes of the podcast, kind of an internal. We talk about this year as a business. Now let's talk about growth and like you're a woman that you're heading an international organization in Mexico. First of all, congrats. And how do you what was your career development to get there, and what do you have to learn to be a leader of international organization?
At first it was very difficult. Like the first 2 years that I started working, in the business intelligence world, because a lot of the times when I would go to interviews with the companies, me or whoever was in my team would be the only woman in the room. So that also pushes you. You kind of have to know a lot. Like you can't really risk the chance of them thinking you don't know what you're talking about. You have to be prepared. You have to be one step ahead. Maybe know a little bit more than the other people that are in the meeting. So it really does push you to be very prepared. Something that makes me a little bit happier now is that it's a bit easier to be a woman. I mean, it's still not easy, but it's less difficult than before. Now there's more associations, there's more visibility on what's happening. And they're also trying to give more visibility to female leaders in different markets, I think, around the world. So that's something that's making it a little bit less challenging. And also being able to go to business meetings or events and having women associations there, like women present, like that's making it a little bit easier to be a woman in leadership.
Yeah, that's getting to be very common and all through Latin America. We've seen women rise all over every industry, company, government to great levels. So, and I think that's great. I think that's part of the evolution of the region, and we're seeing it, of course, in Latin America. Congrats.
So and this topic is just one more thing.
Please.
This topic is also getting deeper, because before it would be enough for a company to paint its office pink, for the month of March, and say like, we thank all of our beautiful women, but that's not enough, and I actually like that a lot of female leaders are also questioning more companies, and we're talking more about policies, like how companies can create better policies, or how, as a woman, you shouldn't have to choose whether you want to be a mom or a CEO. Like, what can we do to create better standards and policies so that women are allowed to follow both paths?
100%. So let's talk about how do you grow your team. We know that the only way to grow a company is by growing your team. Like, how do you learn? How do you help your team learn and continue to evolve and go to the next level?
And this is actually a very important topic as well that we're discussing internally and also with the companies that we're speaking to, that there is a big shortage of quality labor. So here in the business year, we really work on internally developing the people that we have in our teams, like making sure they're prepared, working a lot on internal training. We also give a lot of opportunities to travel around the world, which can be very attractive to the younger generation. So that's something and fast levels of growth. But this is a topic that we're talking a lot with different companies as well, that they're quite concerned about the way maybe the Generation Z can sometimes disappear and quit. So definitely keeping your team happy is a very big priority all over the market.
And how do you learn? What's your way of learning, and how do you keep yourself up to date? Leadership and management styles and all that.
Actually a long time ago, well, maybe 3 years ago, I took your scaling up program and I actually implemented some of the things. I actually implemented some of the things from the program. For example, we're having very clear and visible KPIs. We did have, for example, online, we had a way to measure they were hitting our goals and stuff. But it was very simple. I just bought like a big whiteboard, like I have it written down visibly, and just something as simple as that really motivates the team as well. So there's really simple solutions as well to keep your team happy. It doesn't have to be like a crazy software or something. Sometimes the simplest way of like having people visibly see their advancements can also keep a team motivated, and especially in a long project of ours, like it's a whole year, a year of effort, that we have to do.
And what do you prefer for format of learning? Live courses, online books? What's your way of learning?
I like a mix, for example, because sometimes, especially now that the pandemic is over, like we all were quite deep into the Zooms. Like I try to avoid or keep the Zooms to a minimum now, since we had like 2 or 3 years of that. So I also like to talk like physically in events, or as I mentioned, like going to in-person events is a really good way of getting absorbed in the information. Because sometimes by Zoom, like you're still getting emailed or getting talked to by your supervisor or whatever. So sometimes going into an in-person event is a really good way of getting absorbed in that information, but that's not always possible. So I also like to blend it with maybe like podcasts or, and digital courses as well, like a good blend of that.
Very cool. So if you had just one lesson to share with a business leader, or even better, a businesswoman, what would that be?
To businesswoman. Well, something we discuss a lot, like when I interview other female leaders, is the how important it is for women to say yes to opportunities. So, for example, some companies tell us that they have difficulty finding a female CEO, that they can't find, a woman that wants to take on like these kind of leadership positions. So sometimes just saying yes, or also maybe if the role isn't adapted to your needs, like not being scared to question the systems and policies that are put in place, and getting to these dialogues. How can if there's not enough females or women saying yes to these kind of positions, like what can we change as a company to change the responsibilities of the role?
All right. Hey, Alejandra, really a pleasure. You and I communicate on emails and course and all that, but we've never had a conversation. It was great to spend some time with you and be able to meet you and learn from you and bring the right data about Mexico. It's so important to the world. It's so important for nearshoring, so important for the big corporations to really take decisions. It's great what you guys are doing in Mexico, and of course all over the world, 36 markets. But being Mexican and doing business in the US, I get that complaint all the time. We don't have data, and the data that we are getting, it's something we don't trust. So getting the right data and some data we can trust is very important.
Exactly, Daniel. No, and thank you very much for having me in your podcast. It's an absolute honor to be able to be here and speak with you. And it's always a pleasure for me to be able to promote Mexico and Latin America as places to do business. We work very hard in breaking myths and stereotypes that revolve around these markets by getting firsthand insights from CEOs that are doing business in there. And, if you're an investor or a company that maybe wants to enter these markets, you can take a look at the business year to see what people that are doing business in these markets have to say about the challenges and opportunities.
That's awesome. Hey, Alejandra, if someone wants to follow you or learn more from you, what networks can they follow you?
So feel free to look for me in LinkedIn, and Alejandra Gómez Arriola is my full name on LinkedIn, and you can see kind of the things that we're doing here in Mexico, and to see more about the business here and what we're doing in other markets around the world. You can find us on LinkedIn and Twitter, which is where we're most active.
Super. All right. Alejandra, thank you very much. Great pleasure. And thanks for providing good data about Mexico to the rest of the world.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure to have a chat with you.